Throughout the early chapters of Exodus, God continually tells Moses that everything he does it so that his people and people all over the world will know that he's the Lord. He proved it by delivering them from slavery, humbling the most powerful king on earth under the powerful hand of God. And now the children of Israel need to learn what it means that he's the Lord as they journey with him through everyday life. Because life in this world is filled with all kinds of uncertainty. We need to know that he's the Lord when life doesn't make sense, when we're afraid, when we can't see the road ahead of us, when life feels heavy, when we feel like we've failed one too many times, when we don't understand what he's doing. In those times, we need to really know that he is the Lord. At the end of chapter 13, it says that he led them in a pillar of cloud by day and in a pillar of fire by night. This is so important. God didn't just send some plagues on Pharaoh from heaven and then give Israel a map to the promised land. He himself came to them. He was with them. He walked with them, and he never stopped leading them and guiding them and being present with them, not even for a moment. Here's where we really need to trust him most, though, because he doesn't always lead us in a way that makes sense to us. Look at Israel's situation in chapter 14. God's been leading them moment by moment, but now they find themselves trapped with the Red Sea in front of them and Pharaoh's army behind them. Now, how could that happen when God is the one leading? God could have taken them by a much shorter route, by a much more convenient route, and it would have been much easier if he would have just stopped the Egyptians from following them at all. He certainly could have done that. But God's goal is not to make our lives easy and to make our lives the most convenient. He wants us to know him. And quite often, in order to make that possible, he needs to take us the long way. He needs to take us the less convenient way, or even the difficult way. Don't miss this. God is not reacting to Israel's hard situation. Israel wasn't in this predicament because of anything other than because God intentionally put them there. He's the one who told them to camp by the Red Sea, and he is the one who hardened Pharaoh's heart, which led Pharaoh to then pursue Israel. And he knew exactly what he was doing. But when Israel saw what was happening, they were terrified. They complained to Moses and they said, "Hey, is it because there weren't enough graves in Egypt that you brought us out here to kill us?" But the Lord was so merciful to them, just like the Lord is merciful to us when we complain. It says in verse 19 that the Lord, in the pillar of cloud, moved around behind them, putting himself in between Israel and the Egyptians. He didn't rebuke them for not trusting him. He made himself known. He put himself in between his people and the enemy that they feared the most. Don't look at big bad Pharaoh, he was telling them. He's not in charge here. Look at me. I am the Lord. Well, you know what happens. He parts the Red Sea so that Israel can cross over it safely, and then he causes the waters to come back over the Egyptian army. And that enemy, who just a few minutes ago they thought was going to kill them, is suddenly buried at the bottom of the sea. But just like we so often do, Israel still didn't quite get it. Chapter 15, just a few days after he had parted an entire body of water, they couldn't trust him to find them a little bit of water to drink. And not long after that, in chapter 16, they complain because they don't have food. It's unbelievable. They're so much like us, aren't they? Listen, don't evaluate God's goodness and God's love by how you feel about the circumstances that you are currently facing. Don't ever limit your assessment of God's sovereignty and God's goodness and faithfulness to what you currently see in front of you and behind you. He might take the long way. He might not take the most convenient way. He might even take a painful way, but he will always take the right way, because he wants you to know the joy and the freedom of knowing without a doubt that he is the Lord.